Good evening. Welcome to the Team World Motivation Blog Talk Radio Show. We'll kick off our motivation session with a third part to our divorce sessions. This is part 3 of a mini series on divorce for our children. The reason why we're going into this session, it was the most integral part of talking about divorce with children. And my babies, I want you guys to understand why it's integral for you all to understand and unpack divorce. With parenting and understanding how to take care of your children's mental health, emotional health, parents, is that children have to know how to navigate the world after mom and dad are not together, and what to do when your parents don't get along. And then, parents, you need to know what to do to keep from pulling your kids in the middle of antics when you guys offboard from each other, or when there are second and third parties involved. Because part of that is when second and third parties don't get along, there is a problem. You're talking about offboarding a level of emotional health, mental health, and trying not to cause a level of animosity in either household. Because by this time, you will have separated households, separated finances, separated in every which way, sexually, mentally, emotionally, from each other. You should have. Correction. And for the children, you shouldn't know anything about your mother and dad's sexual things, but you should know that mom and dad don't get along. So at that point, the communication issues and problems should be only isolated at mom and dad don't get along. The personal digs, the levels and depths of not being able to talk to each other like adults shouldn't be happening, but they do. The animosity, the levels of immaturity, the childish behaviors, the abusive behaviors shouldn't be happening, but they do. And when we're talking about, you should be able to find support and know what to do or say when divorced parents are constantly either bickering, arguing, or fighting, when there's hostility or animosity, or in some cases post-separation violence, domestic violence, or abuse that's going on, whether it's documented at police departments or not, or DCNF involvement or not, or levels of after court proceedings. And with that, like we were talking about in the last sessions, was that there can be a level of post-separation abuse or domestic violence that's going on, or financial abuse or coercive control, especially when you have child support proceedings, or you're having levels and depths of separating property, business, finance, or if it's not business, asset management or wealth management. And if your parents have been through a divorce, it can be very stressful for the whole family. Even if your parents have been friendly and cooperative throughout the whole process, for children who grow up in homes where the parents have fought a lot, it can be extra stressful. And this is where we were going over that yesterday about the stressors and the mental health valuation, where it comes to the point of parents fighting so much that the kids become unhealthy mentally, or they start picking up abusive behaviors or emotionally violent behaviors because they're watching one parent abuse the other parent, or if it's 2 or 3 parties abusing one parent. And I gave you guys prime examples of my situation where it's multiple parties, multiple perpetrator violence towards me, and my situation where the child is being used as a pawn, and then it becomes a whole crapshoot of situations of other people getting involved, not getting the whole story, or getting involved and then benefiting from the situation and adding more fuel to a dumpster fire that could have been easily resolved with a couple different things, only a judge, a lawyer, and being able to resolve and amicably walk away from each other. But when it becomes an animosity-ridden 3rd and 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th party, and then you've got guardians in between, and then you have community violence, and then you've got added more sauce to a already big dumpster fire that's going and snowballing into a whole mountainous level of, here we go, all right, I'm fine. Then it becomes a level of complete total. And then we're talking about a level of, oh my God, this is a nightmare. And when you're at that point, it becomes more than just a whole entire, well, crapshoot shit show. It becomes a level of a child having to sit there, and excuse me, babies, I don't like to normally use that language, but you children, I know y'all cuss at school, don't do that. Mind your manners. But you children will be sitting up there in my office talking about mom and dad, and when I have to tell you to mind your manners, don't use that language. I want y'all to understand how that sounds. I don't want y'all to do it. So when you're sitting in an office having to explain to your life coach like me, or your relationship coach like me, or your divorce coach like me, and I'm having to explain while the kid is sitting up here fussing and cussing about mommy and daddy because mom and dad can't get along, and the levels of fussing and fighting that y'all are doing is frustrating the child. They're hearing the cussing, they're hearing the fussing. Let me clear my throat. And the child is hearing y'all blame each other about everything when you come to pick the children up, whether it's at mom's house or dad's house, or they're hearing the new wife or the new husband that's on either side talking mess about the other party, or they're getting involved listening to one side instead of listening to all sides of the situation and sitting it out. There's being judgment being passed. There's levels of animosity so deep with the third parties, fourth parties, twice removed. And then you have the guardians where it could be grandparents or other family members who get involved. Sides are being taken. And then you're talking about levels and depths of hurt feelings, butt hurt, and levels of Timmy and Tammy Turnup who get pulled in the middle. And when I say Timmy and Tammy Turnup will start turning up on you, they will. They will start doing disrespectful things. They will get pulled into the middle of a nomenclature, and they will be used as pawns. That is when you have the counter-parenting, and that's when you have the, instead of co-parenting, you have counter-parenting and divisive abusive behaviors on sides of parenting, to where you'll never believe how far people will go to use a kid as a pawn. It's happened to me, where my daughter was used as a pawn, and it's not fair to her. And then she feels like she has to choose a side, and that's not fair. Whereas, personal digs are being made, and then it's just when it gets to a point where you're just exhausted because you're like, where is this coming from? So when you think about this, your parents fight a lot. It can be extra stressful. Perhaps you witness fighting or long periods of silent treatment between your parents or guardians while they're still either living together or not living together, but there is a level and depth of, there's some level of things being said, and then the child is absorbing it like a sponge. It's just like SpongeBob. I'm ready. Except for the kid is like Squidward, like, and the kid is out there thinking to themselves. And by the time you're all sitting over here thinking about this, the kid's writing all this down in their head. And there's a point where that child is starting to absorb all this, making those mental notes. So while they're sitting up there, and the parents are now offboarded, divorced from each other, or divorced from each other, even if they're in a long-term relationship and they're just done, if they're still arguing, the stress continues. And it's easy to get caught in the middle and struggle with these feelings. And, divided loyalty. Fear is invoked in this child to feel, I gotta make a choice when I'm here or there. And that's not fair. The child should never have to be making a choice. That child should be loved in either spot. There should be no levels of mommy's new boyfriend, or daddy's new girlfriend, or daddy's new wife, and mommy's new husband, or anything like that. There shouldn't be a level of sadness or anger in that child. If there's a level of upset, even with guardians or grandparents or custodial, non-custodial grandparents, things like that, then there's a problem. If there's no custody with the grandparent, then, like my situation, I'm the only custodial parent. There should be no level of guardians or anybody else in between causing a level of chaos with the primary child. That is the focus. The focus should be that the child's mental health, emotional welfare, and safety and sanity should stay intact. The child becomes more fragile because she's being pulled in more directions than she should be. The main focus should be that child's mental health. Let me clear my throat again. And, for everybody in the back that doesn't seem to understand this, take notes. The child should be the main focus for everybody involved. The child should have always a neutral space, a headspace, a place to lay down and know that their mental health is the top priority. Their emotional health, their safety, their sanity is the top priority, not the personal agenda of all parties involved. And in my mind, when I first offboarded from my relationship from my daughter's father, it was always to preserve the relationship with her dad and me. So that's fine. Or so I think. So her dad and I always have this open door policy. We raise her together but separate. He has a wife, and I am doing what I need to do to continue to maintain my schooling and my coaching and my career. And then in the interim, if I find someone, that's great. But the prime example is if mommy finds a husband, then daddy has to be okay with that. There should be no animosity there. But if mommy's remarried and then mommy's new ex-husband becomes a pain in the rear end, then that's adding a variable there. But if mommy's new ex-husband has a new wife who's becoming vindictive and becoming a narcissistic supply, then we have a level of this. Then we have a level of there's a problem here. Then if the new stepfather becomes more vindictive in the offboarding of that marriage, it becomes a multi-perpetrator situation. And if the new ex-husband's narc supply of a wife and their friends become a problem, it becomes a multi-perpetrator situation. So that's a prime example of that. Then if mommy gets a new husband or new love interest, and that new love interest comes in blindsided and doesn't know what's going on, then we have a level of, oh crap, here we go, a dumpster fire shit show. What does Timmy and Tammy Turnip get to do? They get to sit there in the middle and get pulled between a bunch of people who don't know how to act. Poor kid doesn't know if she's going or coming. Because then you've got grandma, then you've got non-custodial granddad, then you got non-custodial grandma, then you've got, well, their step-grandma, step-granddad, then you've got the other dumpster fire maternal grandma. There's no husband there. But then you've got other people who love this kid dearly, but they're pulling this kid in the other direction. So then we have the kid being a pawn and ping pong in front of everybody. So what does the kid do? Loses her shit. Sorry, kiddos, this is rated R. But I want y'all to understand this from your point of view, because I know you kids cuss and don't do it at school. And this is for the parents as well. So parents, be aware that your kids should be listening to this, but cover their ears. Because part of this is, I know Timmy and Tammy Turnip cuss at school, but they need to understand this from the regular point of view, that my babies don't cuss at school. Remember, mind your manners and watch your language. I'm a mother. I'm going to wash my kid's mouth out with soap. So with that being said, as a mother, I'm aware of what you kids do. So when you come in my office, do not cuss. You do it, I'm going to wash your mouth out with soap with your parents' permission. You heard me. So with that being said, you kiddos, I know that you're going through it. And I know it's not easy as a child to have to deal with mommy and daddy divorcing. It sucks. Because part of that is that you have to understand the animosity is real. The complications of mom and dad divorcing is real. The loyalty that you feel towards mommy and daddy is real. The hatred you feel towards daddy or stepdaddy's new wife is real. The feelings towards daddy's new wife, or daddy's new girlfriend is real. Same thing with mommy's new husband, or new stepdaddy is real. That's okay. But you don't have a right to be disrespectful, rude, or mean. So that's where you kids have to understand there are levels to everything in effective communication. And this is why we talk about that in our classes about all of that. Because just like we talk to parents about effective communication, it's the exact same thing with parents. You have to find a way for effective discipline with parenting as well as you do with marriage and divorce. And we're talking about this, it's not just child's play, it is something that has to be done. Communicating with children and communicating with adults is the same exact thing. You have to coax an adult like, good adult. Yes, that's how you talk to your child. That's the same thing with an adult and an adult. That's how you talk to your ex-spouse. Good ex-spouse. That same exact thing. Here's a cookie. Good job. And it's a sad thing that you have to talk to someone like that. And it's literally adults play at that point. And you have to find a way to balance that out without being condescending and find a way for you to find the divorce language. Instead of love language at that point, it's divorce language. And in that divorce language, there is a way to talk to each other without pissing each other off. And the main thing you need to know is it's not your fault when you're a child and dealing with divorce. And the same thing with the adults. Find a way for it to not be a fault there, even though there might be fault in the divorce, but finding a way to balance it out with the child. And with the children, I want you to understand it's not your fault that your parents are divorced. And it's not your job to try to fix them, counsel them, or help them, or act as a go-between in their disagreements. And this is another thing that we have to hit on, is that when you have a divorce going on in divorce proceedings, you did nothing for your parents to fall out. You didn't make mommy and daddy leave each other alone. You didn't do anything to force them to not act right towards each other. That is a choice. You've either witnessed them fighting. They either fought a lot prior to them actually fighting in front of you. You're just now seeing the overflow of their emotional breakdown in front of you. And then on top of that, it's easier said than done to fix a irrevocably broken marriage and irrevocably broken friendship or levels of relationship things that go into variables of staying married, finances, economics, and things that are cringeworthy to talk about, like sex. Don't have sex before marriage, kids. Because your parents are going to do this. So remember, don't have sex before marriage if you do use condoms. That's my disclaimer for today. I'm a mother, so I had to do that. That's my PSA for today. But remember, you have to look at your current situation with your mom and dad and review some things that you need to do in dealing with them and parents who fight and argue. And find that, look at a couple of different things. What to do. How old were you when your parents divorced and separated? Describe what it was like when they divorced and separated and how you felt at that moment. If you felt any type of guilty, don't. There is no right or wrong answer in this. What is happening currently? Figure out when they were fighting. What were they fighting about? Do they fight in front of you? Do they tell you individually about their fights with the other parent? They shouldn't be doing that. Do they try to involve you or make you take sides? They shouldn't be doing that. Do they ask you to keep secrets in front of each other or behind each other's back? Don't do that. Don't get involved in being their gatekeeper or their secret keeper, because that's not your job. Or that don't tell mom this or don't tell dad stuff. Sit that out, dear heart, because you're going to end up crazy doing that, okay? Nobody needs to be a whole human diary for mom and dad's crap. Do they blame you for their divorce or ongoing arguments? First of all, you're not to blame for any of their crap antics. I am just going to tell you that, kiddo. You're not to blame for mommy and daddy not knowing how to act. If mommy and daddy can't get along and they like to blame you, I'm sorry. That's a cop out. So don't ever, in your right good sound mind, ever believe that you're at fault for mommy and daddy not being able to talk to each other like an adult. Because if they get on the level of 2-year-olds and want to argue and fight, that means they have ineffective coping mechanisms. Extreme circumstances are causing that, and it means that they should have separated a long time ago. They're just using you for a scapegoat. So sorry, kid. I'm not having that. So, whether it's your mom or dad being the custodial parent, neither one of them has a right to blame you for their demise of their marriage. And if you're being threatened or you're being used as a bargaining chip, both your parents need to have a timeout. Neither one of them need to be parenting you until they can understand that you're not a bargaining chip. You're not to be used as a pawn in any of their antics. That's been done to me as a parent. And to let you know straight up, that is not fair. Because that is a way to cause a level of coercive control in a marriage or offboarding from a marriage, and it's a divisive way to hurt and harm the other parent. And no child should ever be used as a pawn, even when there's a custodial guardian or non-custodial guardian. There should never be any way, shape, or form a child used as a pawn to counterparent or erode any custodial agreements. At that point in time, you as a child should sit that out and say to yourself, I'm not doing this. Not today, Mom. Not today, Dad. I'm not doing this. Not today, Grandma. Not today, Granddad. Not today. Because your mental health means more to the actual parent that's not trying to pull those type of tricks. Because as a parent, I know that it's not emotionally healthy. And when a child is used as a pawn, they begin to have a guilt complex. It begins to work on their mental health, and they begin to feel guilty over time. Once they realize they've been used as a pawn, it begins to work on them emotionally, mentally, and sometimes it begins to make them angry, and they begin to have trust issues. And once a child has trust issues, they become jaded. They begin to not trust adults, and that seeps over into their relationships. And you kiddos should never have relationship trust issues by the time you're in a teenager, or when you become a teenager to a young adult and having a lot of issues by the time you are a full-blown adult. I don't want that for any of you. My daughter went through that, and that's something I never wanted for her. And I had to do a lot of work with her and her things that she had to go through, and I had to put her through therapy. That's why I always recommend you kiddos go to therapy. There's nothing wrong with seeing psychiatrists, psychologists. There's nothing wrong with seeing a coach about those type of things, and that's why I'm doing this on the third session for you guys to understand that. For you kiddos, you babies, and you parents to understand the detriment that you can cause a level of mental health breakdown if you don't quit. And then for you kiddos, what are some of your main concerns? In terms of how your parents' divorce is affecting you. What have you done to address these concerns? And for you kids, I suggest you always be diplomatic in your expression. Like, I don't like when you and dad fight. I don't like what dad says about you. I don't like that dad might be talking about you behind your back. I don't like how he insults you behind your back. Or if it's grandma. If grandma's saying something about you, Mom, I don't like that. But the thing is, you as a parent, don't take what the child says and go and confront the other parent. Just duly note it and document it and just move on from it. What you have to do is remember when a child's being used as a pawn, sometimes that's used as a gaslighting technique and tactic. It's been done to me. And you have to find a way to not be divisive in this and fall prey to it or become reactive. Because it can set a level of parents that are being targeted for you to have reactive abuse syndrome and go nuclear the heck off on the divisive parties who are doing the abusive antics and using a child as a pawn. It's been done to me, and I can guarantee you I went nuclear the hell off. Because they will make you scream. And there will be levels and depths that you have to get to a point that you start making mental notes. The reason why you have to start making mental notes is you have to start not reacting and start being proactive and undoing the damage. And before you end up damaged and messed up and you start getting to be like Yosemite Sam, you the rootinest, tootinest, beep, 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 beep. It gets downright ugly. And with that, here's some do's and don'ts in dealing with divorced parents who are fighting, arguing, or there's counter-parenting going on. Like, these are things that I had to actually deploy in order to keep from having intimate partner violence to the extremes of reacting. And I was seen reacting on social media. The man was going out his way to do this. I had divisive other intermediaries that were helping with the raising of the child and causing levels of divisiveness, and it became multi-perpetrator violence and workplace violence and levels of upset, uproar. And I mean, it just was, they were gathering false evidence and using it for court, and it just became a mess. So when we're talking about people willing to lie, legal abuse, emotional abuse, it happens. You talk to the parents individually. This might seem obvious and it might be very hard, but it's still important to say, let each one know their fighting and arguing is affecting you. Tell them how hard it is for you. Ask to talk to your parents together and ask if they can try harder to get along because it's making it hard for you. Here's why. Because until they understand that they're affecting you, they're going to keep doing it. Also, for reasons in court, you need to be able to effectively say, I talked to mom and dad. I've talked to the other parties. I've let them know that this bothers me. Like my daughter, she actually talked to me. She said, I am getting bothered by, I don't want to be in the middle of this. And I said, I don't want you in the middle of this. I don't want you to be in the middle of any parental alienating BS. I actually showed her what parental alienation was. I'm like, I'm not trying to do this. I don't want to talk about anybody that's involved. I don't want to talk about your grandparent. I don't want to talk about anybody else. I literally want you to get the help that you need. I don't want you parental alienated from me. And I made it clear, and I left it at that. And I was like, if you're going to be parental alienated, or there's going to be any levels of antics or animosity towards me, I'm not going to talk to you. I will let you get the therapies that you need, and I will help you through it, but I will not be a pawn or you used as a pawn against me, and I'm not going to have you parental alienated like this, and I don't like it. And we had those conversations. And then next, directly ask them not to fight in front of you or put you in the middle. Ask them to ask you to take sides. And that's where I made it clarified. I will not allow her to take sides. I allow her to be able to love all parties. Now, the multi-perpetrator violence in between, it became extreme to where I'm like, you know what, you can choose whoever you want to be around, but I'm not going to be a party to this crapshoot shit show. I refuse to. Because there's a point where somebody has to be the adult and sit it out. And I decided to sit it out. If you do not feel you can approach the parents individually or together, find a trusted third party or adult to talk to, a relative, family, friend, teacher, coach, or guidance counselor, or psychiatrist, psychologist who can talk with your parents or on your behalf to help your parents identify, or a family therapist who can work with them or with the whole family. And the thing is, I went to therapy and they saw I wasn't the problem. They saw that I wasn't the issue. They saw what the problem was. It was the other people. And at that point in time, I was like, okay, well, dang. Well, it definitely wasn't me. They saw that it was the other guardian involved. It was not me. So at that point, there was levels of, okay, well, I see that the mom is not the problem. Well, okay. Looks like we figured it out. I never was the problem. Well, alrighty. So at that point, you have to realize the child's still more important than you being right. So then keep in touch with both parents and make sure that you have a healthy environment for the child, no matter what. And that should be all parents' key goals. Okay? And then even if one is far away and doesn't communicate as much, set up Skype or email connections to maintain relationship, except in cases of past abuse or neglect or other such trauma or complex situations. Kind of like my situation, it's become a point where it's detrimental to the child. The child's being used as a pawn, community terrorism, provoke gaslight, compromising to my safety, mental health, emotional health, and sanity. And then the levels of insanity ensuing on part of that and causing erosion of my mental health, compromising my safety, my dwellings, and using the child as a pawn. It's just become a level in depth that there has to be charges filed. The child has to be protected, and it's a lot. So those are prime examples of multi-perpetrator violence, community violence, and terrorism. And then you're talking about a wealthy man in between, and then it becomes a level of upsetting to the child. So the child has to be protected, and that's the main focus. But those are prime examples of why you see a therapist, psychiatrist, psychologist, LSW, MSW, and MD. Then figure out what's appropriate, contact or no contact with the other perpetrators or other parental alienating factors or mitigating people who are becoming extreme factors to that child's mental health and emotional health. And that's where DCNF isn't supposed to coach the child, but the DCNF is supposed to step in, as I called DCNF, but the child was coach, and there was other people who had vested interest, and it became a level of a dumpster fire. for lack of better words. And then suggest compromises if possible if the parents are fighting about, for instance, both wanting to attend or events or celebrations, to honor those wishes and things like that. Like for me, I'm amicably willing for events, celebrations, one party to come at another time, I come at another time. If we see each other or whatnot, I wait till they're done and then I come up and then do my part and then leave. And we don't have to talk because we're not at a point of amicable being able to talk to each other. But that child's more important. So I can be amicable enough to say, hey, I'll wait until they're done, then you come over here. That's fine. But if you have a party that is willing to be a parental alienating factor or spoil an event, then there's a point where you just can't be around each other. You just have to come at different times, and then that's fine. Or, figure out a plan together that takes turns and divide the time. See, I'm one of those type of people, I'm willing to do that because it's in the best interest of that child. Because I refuse to make that child to pick sides. And at that point in time, the child's old enough to make those decisions. And that's fine. Or switching off the time periods. But when you have someone who's willing to go to levels of vicious cruelty, inhumane mistreatment, and levels of multi-perpetrator violence, that's where it's just like, okay, it's a no-go situation. We just have to switch off times, we don't see each other, and just make it a level and depth of we're just not going to be able to amicably resolve this unless there's charges filed and certain people are just exited out of the whole equation. So then you have to also remember to get active in your life, make friends, and join clubs, and distract the child from the emotional torment and provoke and gaslight the bullying and the things that are going on to the custodial parent like myself, and allow the child to be able to breathe and get away from that. Put the child in sports and other different things that are healthy, coping mechanisms and therapies, and going to a psychiatrist, psychologist, and therapist or a coach like myself that's certified in these areas of specialty to be able to get the professional help that they need and be able to battle buddy that child so that child won't end up with unhealthy coping mechanisms, unhealthy communicating mediums, and ways of handling things that are in conflict that they shouldn't learn at a young age. And this is what happened with my daughter, and undoing it it takes a village to raise a child, and with that it takes a whole level of specialists to undo all the damage. And then, having your child join a support group for teens experiencing divorce, and find an online forum or group for support. That's why TeenWorld.online has a support team and group for adolescents, young adults, and then things like that. And we have it separated for the younger children and for the young adults, adolescents, and teens, and manned by an adult. And the MDs and the LSWs and MSWs that will be coming on board to actually admin the accounts to look and make sure the kids are okay. And then here's the don't for my babies. Don't act as a go-between or a messenger. If your parents aren't talking to each other, tell them clearly and calmly that you cannot get in the middle. Ask them to find another way to communicate, such as email or text, or use an application. And then take sides, even if you clearly have a preference for one parent or beef against the other. Putting yourself in the middle can only make matters worse, even if it's not fair to you or your parents. Just don't get to a point of taking sides. Just sit neutral and just tell both parents, I love you both, but I'm not taking either one of your sides. Y'all figure it out. I'm not going to sit here in the middle and be pulled in between both y'all's immaturity. And at that point in time, tell them, look, I'm adult enough and I'm a mini adult. Y'all should act like adults, and I'm just going to sit this out. Point blank, period. Period to the period. That's all, folks. And that's what you should do. Do not try to play your parents against each other to get things out of them, concessions or anything like that. Don't try to get benefits out of the whole deal, because it's not going to work out well for you, Tammy and Tammy Turn Up. It's not going to work out at all. Because you're going to end up pulling your hair out. And your parents will too. Not to get favors, privileges, it's not going to work out well for you in the long run, because you're going to eventually self-destruct. And don't try to be their therapist or their counselor. They need one. Some of them need a straitjacket. You didn't hear that from me. And suggest they seek professional help. Yeah, that was funny. Anyway, then what is the first step you're willing to take to get help from the situation? That means seek therapists, seek a psychiatrist, seek a specialist in this field. And your first step is seeing me, seeing your MSW, seeing your LSW, and seeing your psychiatrist. because sometimes your parents can do a number on you, and you're going to need to see someone like me who's going to say, first of all, Timmy, turn up. What's wrong with you today? Okay. How are we feeling today? You know, all that good jazz. And then, what would you like to say to your parent if you could really say how you really feel? So at that point, say it with your chest and let your parent know, I don't like this. I'm not happy. I'm not happy y'all are divorcing. I'm pissed off that y'all are acting like 2-year-olds. And I really want y'all to get along just for me. And that's all you have to say. And then begin to figure out the safe people that you can go to. And then on top of that, your support and guidance team. And then last but not least, figure out how you're going to be able to go from here and figure out how you're going to love your parents through the whole entire divorce proceedings and how you're going to cope as a young adult, a child, or as an adult if your parents are divorcing, and figure out how you're going to have the I am abundance mindset, become more illuminated, and feel better as your parents are divorcing each other, and find a way to amicably be able to be a child in between your parents and love them both, together but separate. Okay? So that's it for the coaching for today. It's all adults play and child's play and communicating effectively and still building your self-esteem to get up, get out, and do something. Don't let the world pass you by. So thank you for attending the Team World Online Destination Motivation third part to the divorce series. Have a nice day.